Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. Right, okay, so on today's podcast, I have Ian Dee from Geospatial Insights. Now, Ian is a climate applications lead, and when I met you, Ian, and I saw your title, I got quite excited, I think, didn't I?
A little bit, yes.
Just hearing about what you, and like I said, by the way, thank you for joining me, I should say, to start off with. We met at the EV show back in November, didn't we?
That's right, yeah.
So it seems it is ages ago, isn't it? And we have tried this recording before, but
we're very trying, yeah.
There were some issues, weren't there? So and your wife's all right now, anyway, isn't she?
She's fine, yeah.
Fabulous.
Just a sore ankle, nothing, dented pride, nothing more.
Oh, bless her. Oh, God. Well, yeah, I fell down the steps a couple of years ago and I had to have a shoulder operation after that. But that's another story. I'm tangenting now. Anyway, right, back on to you. Okay, so Geospatial Insight formed in 2012, were you saying to me?
That's right, yeah.
2012. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do, what Geospatial Insight does, and a bit about, tell us about your background first. How did you do this? Because you were just saying to me, weren't you, before we start recording, you set up another company and it all sort of kind of came in together because you were kind of complementing Geospatial Insight, weren't you? Tell everybody a bit about that.
That's right, yeah. Well, my background is in the geospatial sector. Mm-hmm. I've sort of been in the industry since 99-ish. So, 23, 24 years now. Yeah. But yeah, I set up a company called Energio in 2015 with the kind of core focus of using all this geospatial technology and data that we've got, so satellite imagery, aerial photography, but trying to really push the agenda on using that for sustainability related applications. I know the guys from Geospatial Insight. We all used to work together at Airbus Defence and Space in the UK many moons ago. So they were aware of some of the things we were doing at Energio, and Geospatial Insight was starting to develop some of their own climate applications, and it just kind of made sense to bring these two businesses together and have that strength in numbers, I guess is what they say. Geospatial Insight originally were using a lot of the same technologies and data that Energio were, but for applications in the equities, commodities, finance sectors. But over the time, obviously the climate agenda becomes so pushed to the forefront that they were starting to do some of their own climate related work as well. At Energio, we were largely focusing on renewable energy, so solar, wind, Emobility, property retrofit, and at Geospatial Insight it was largely around things like emissions monitoring, air quality and carbon sequestration. So although in very different spheres, climate-wise, very complementary. And as I say, late 2021, we sat down and said, look, this should all just be under one umbrella. Let's bring it all together and have the combined expertise of both teams and the knowledge of both teams and take it forward under the Geospatial Insight banner. And that's what we did.
Brilliant. So tell me a bit, if you will, about the sectors that you work with and how the technology, the types of technology that you've got. I mean, you've kind of given us a bit of an inkling there, but how does it help those sectors? What is it that you're doing? What is it that you're providing to them?
Yeah, I mean, we work across many sectors, as you've probably seen on the website.
Yeah.
But with a lot of the renewable energy, the e-mobility elements, which kind of more my responsibility, I guess, our clients are largely split between local authorities and private sector. And with the private sector, it's usually either the developers of those technologies themselves. So we work with solar developers, we work with charge point operators, or with consultants who are working across the breadth of the kind of the sector itself. So, as you know, a consultant will work with players both in their own private sector and the public sector to do their element of the work, and we sometimes work directly with those as well. So it's a bit of everything really. And what we're doing, I guess, is probably two things. I think first and foremost, we digitalise the surveying process. And obviously, if you think of talking about electric vehicles, we met at the London EV show. One of the things we're sort of looking at the moment as a nation is how we put more EV charge points in place.
Yes.
And understanding the best locations for those charge points is a complex procedure. What we're doing is trying to use data to answer a lot of those questions for those organisations that are deploying them. Why would you put a charge point here? Is it in the right place? Are there any other chargers nearby? Is there proliferation of vehicle users in this area? Is EV uptake high? Is it an affluent area that's likely to have early adopters for EV at the moment? All of those kind of things. So we're doing that kind of preliminary surveying element to them. When you go and put a charge point in, or you're going to put solar in, you're going to go to site anyway.
Yes.
But if you go to site pre-armed with a lot of information and knowing the questions you need to ask when you get there, that makes that site visit much more efficient. So I would say that's kind of the first thing that we're doing, is digitalising a lot of that process. The second thing is we're providing an evidence base on which to make decisions. And the beauty of geospatial information is that you can work at scale. So we don't just look at a site, we look at a city or a county.
Okay.
And when you can put a county's worth of information in front of somebody about EV charging, about solar, about wind, they can start to look at it and sort of rank and prioritise their actions based on sort of data-driven intelligence. The solar's a great example of that, because we're doing work on both rooftop and ground mount solar, and for all of that we sort of say, look, you could put this much solar on this site, it would generate X amount of electricity and save you Y of CO2 over a lifetime. So you can start to look at what the return on your investment is, both financially and environmentally.
That's good. That's really good. So that what you're just saying there about solar, is that the locate solar that you've just started started promoting, haven't you?
It is, yeah.
That sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah. So locate solar is it's a database we've created, which comes with its sort of own dashboard and platform, but it's got the solar suitability of every roof in England pre-mapped. So 23 million plus buildings. Scotland and Wales are coming, so yeah, it's just that we've sort of finished England first, and we'll move on to Scotland and Wales in time. So over the next few months, that database will have around 29 million buildings in it with all the solar intelligence. Yeah.
So the buildings, is it kind of like my house, or is it? So is it residential areas, or is it commercial areas that you've kind of got that information on?
Everything.
Is it? So you've probably got my house on
We
your
probably
database.
have. Yes.
Cool.
I sort of call it an indiscriminate assessment. If there's a building there, we look at it and we'll measure its roof pitch, we'll measure its roof aspect, look at the irradiance, figure out how many modules you can get on the roof.
Oh my God.
So for every one of those 23 million buildings, there's about 25 different attributes that tell us why that building is or isn't suitable for solar.
Because, so funnily enough, we've just had a quote. We've had about 3 quotes for solar and batteries. And I was kind of wondering, I suppose I just assumed that the company that was doing it, they would be using Google Earth. Because,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming yours is not, it's not,
No.
you've got lots and lots of other, your technology is, so, right, okay. Tell me how your technology is different to Google Earth then. What do you get out?
Yeah.
What can you see?
I think there's the first thing is that obviously Google Earth, although you can look at things in 3D on Google Earth, generally it's a kind of top-down
Yeah.
view,
Yeah.
and also you're manually interpreting what you can see from Google
Right.
Earth.
Right.
Whereas we have an automated method of looking at a property in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
So we can extract the actual roof pitch, the actual roof
Oh my God.
aspect, the usable space of the roof, so we can sort of, exclude dormer windows, chimneys, parapet walls, air conditioning vents. And then from there, we'll kind of push that information through an irradiance calculator so we can see how much exposure to the sun's energy that roof gets over time. And then we can start to work out, well, if the roof is this shape and can get this many modules on it and is exposed to this much of the sun's energy, then it would generate this much electricity and save this much CO2 based on removing fossil fuel generation from the grid.
Yeah.
The other thing we do as well is we do all of those statistics over 1 year. So, if you put solar on your roof now, in the next year, this is approximately what you'd earn, generate, save. But we also do it over a 20-year period. So you can look at lifetime payback of putting solar on a roof.
Oh my
And
God. Okay.
and
Yeah.
that's become really the key statistic, is that lifetime element, because we don't work with consumers. So our data does not go out into the public realm for people
No.
to go and look at their own properties.
No.
It goes to a housing association who want to, make their tenants' lives more comfortable, more affordable,
Yeah.
but also to
Yeah.
decarbonise their stock. It would go to a local authority who are putting their climate strategy together and maybe want to look at their own estates buildings. Or it would go out to a solar developer who are looking at putting big installs on warehouses and industrial roofs under, power purchase agreements perhaps. And they're interested in that payback over the 15, 20 years rather than just what they're going to get over the next 12 months.
That's interesting because, like I say, so the company that we've, or the three companies that we've had the information come back from, the last one, were the information that they provided. To be honest, you know what I did? I actually went to my husband because he's the data geek out of the two of us. I went, right, you can have a look at that one. You'd probably have liked that,
Yeah.
but actually, the information that they were providing was really, really in depth. Do you know what I mean? So I just thought,
Yeah.
this is providing us with something that we've not had before. So looking at the payback up, we'd had payback over time, because at the moment the energy tariff that we're currently on it's been fixed for probably 2 or 3 years before we
Yeah.
kind of ended up sort of locking into that, which was really quite fortuitous in a way because of what's been going on in the last kind of 6, 9, 12 months. But that runs out in June.
Yes. Yeah, we've got similar.
Have
Ours
you?
is kind of April or May for us. So yeah, we're sort of along the same lines really. But no,
And
it's interesting, that kind of, like you say, that level of detail you're getting. It needs somebody who kind of understands solar to look at it and pull those pieces of information together. What we're doing is we're doing that at scale.
yes, yeah,
That needs somebody to sit at a desktop and interpret that. And doing that for your property probably took them 30 minutes, an hour, whatever that might have taken. By having that data off the shelf for 23 million buildings in the UK, again, they're still going to come out and look at your house and do a full roof survey before they put solar on. But that initial piece of, I've been asked about putting solar on this roof. I can have a look at some data now that gives me a really good insight as to whether that roof is suitable, what it might generate. So when I go to site or when I go and speak to the homeowner or the occupier, I've already got a lot of information. I'm pre-armed with it, and it just makes the conversation a lot easier. Even if our data said actually that roof's not suitable for solar, that's a good way of sort of excluding lots and lots of buildings. And a lot of our local authority clients do exactly that. They'll look at the data and go, okay, we've got 1 million buildings in Kent, for example,
yeah,
but 300,000 of them aren't suitable for solar. Let's go and work on what are the top 10% of the rest are, where we're going to really get our bang for our buck.
yeah. Funnily enough, you're kind of saying that about excluding. Bizarrely enough, actually, I was thinking, I think we've had 4 companies now, because one of the companies, the second one, and I was really, really disappointed. came out and said we weren't suitable, but the other three have said we were. We were.
Yeah.
So
I
isn't it funny? Why would that be? Why would they interpret it that way and say we weren't if the others have said we are?
yeah, I think every property is generally suitable to some degree, but it's to what degree that is. Most properties will have some sort of solar suitable roof facet. It's just how big that facet is, how many modules would you get on it.
Yes.
Does it need a bespoke design that's going to take extra time? Is it an engineering challenge to get the solar on the roof?
Yeah.
There might be lots of elements that come into play there, and perhaps that specific company was looking for a less challenging installation or a quicker win, maybe.
I think you're probably right. So they were saying that do you call it a solar array when you're
Yeah.
actually putting them in? So they said that their solar arrays were in sixes, and we didn't have enough room for six, but we've definitely got more room for. Anyway, yes, we'll move back onto you again. So, okay, so all of this, if we look at low carbon technology as kind of like a mainstay, then we all need to make sure that we're trying to push towards some form of decarbonisation. How do you feel at the moment that the market is going for you? Are they, because a lot, I don't think it's every single council, for example, have declared a climate emergency, but a lot of them have, haven't they?
They have, yeah.
So are councils the ones that are kind of coming to you now and saying, as part of our climate emergency, our strategy is this, we need you to look at all of our buildings?
Yeah, the local authorities is a strange one, because I think about 85-90% now have declared a climate emergency, but not all of those ones that have declared a climate emergency have put strategies in place yet. Those that have put strategies in place, some of them are referring to just their own estates, so their own buildings and land. Others are referring to their administrative areas as a whole. So it's a really sort of complex area, because there's no two authorities are doing the same thing, which is kind of understandable when you think that you can have two different local authorities that are neighbour, but they have very different social, economic landscapes. So it differs. Some local authorities would come to us and say, look, we've got a very definite idea about our strategy and we're interested in getting the data to underpin that and start to put it into place. Other local authorities will come to us and say, look, we've just declared a climate emergency. We don't really know where to start, and we're interested in what the data would tell us. So there's two different approaches there. And then what we're getting as well is in the private sector, we're getting businesses coming to us and saying, we need to be smarter about how we develop our opportunity pipeline, and also how we work with a local authority, because the local authorities are often the end clients. In a lot of these things, if we work with a charge point operator, for instance, their end client is often the local authority anyway. But it's about how do they get more data around why their solution is the right one for that local authority. And to show they've done the due diligence, they understand that local authority's area, what the challenges are, and our data is helping them do that. So it's depending on the client and the stage they're at in their own kind of journey. We'll provide them with similar types of information or intelligence, but we'll provide a kind of little consultative wrapper around it that lets them understand it specifically for their own needs.
I was going to say the due diligence side has got to be so important, hasn't it? Because, and I have heard that it's not happening all over the UK with regards to charge point operators. There are some that aren't quite as advanced as others when it comes to due diligence.
Yeah, I think I must caveat this that everyone out there is trying to do a good job.
Yeah. And I agree. And please, whoever's listening and watching this, I'm not kind of dissing anybody at all. I'm just saying that due diligence is very, very important. And actually, from a continuous improvement side of things, which is what I'm involved in, you don't want to end up doing something twice. For a start off, you're doubling your carbon footprint. And actually, if you're having to do something twice, you're paying people to do it twice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a massive double whammy on this. The sustainability side, the carbon footprints, it's a triple whammy, isn't it, really? And actually, we call it right first time. It was,
Exactly.
that's right first time, because that's what you want, isn't it?
Do it once, do it right. And you're absolutely right. What we're seeing in the kind of EV charging world at the moment is we're getting much better. Everybody's getting much better at doing this. But historically, we're seeing a lot of stranded assets,
Right.
because they've been put somewhere where we think this is a good location for a charge point, but it's not particularly evidence driven, and that charge point gets put into place and it doesn't really get used, or if it's an on-street charger, it's been put in a place that might cause an obstruction if someone's trying to get a wheelchair past it, those kind of things. So trying to do that due diligence and say, actually, and interestingly, one of the charge point operators we're working with, they have this kind of thought process where they say, could we put a charge point there, and should we put a charge point there? And the could is kind of almost anywhere, and the should is then all of these other elements that come along with it. And we've created a data driven model that takes in about 20 different criteria for them to say whether a charge point should be put in this particular location. So it's taking those, and that criteria will be different for every single installer or every operator, and obviously it's different for on street to off street, but it's the similar principles around it. It's are we putting this charge point or this charging hub in the right place where it's not just going to be used now, but it's going to be used in 5 years, 10 years, and actually the longevity of that infrastructure is set. I think that's where we've failed before. We're saying, the core one that I always come across is a resident request, which is a great indicator of where a charge point's needed.
Yes.
But,
I didn't realise that this happened, but I've been talking to a council last week who told me this.
Yeah, but one person wanting a charge point outside their house doesn't necessarily indicate that the rest of the street is ready to take that leap to EVs. And what we find is you'll get one resident request, but suddenly 20 charge points appear on that street because they go, oh, actually, yeah. But a year later, there's still only one person on that street with an EV, for instance. So it's a challenging one, but we are getting there. We are getting better, and I think the data can really help inform those decisions. Like I say, you're still going to go to site, you're still going to look at it in more detail, but you go there knowing what you're looking for, or you use the data to eliminate a site, and you save yourself that work anyway.
What do you reckon happens if, say, for example, a local authority, like you said, they've got that single resident request, and it must be hard to argue with a resident if they want something. You don't want to have lots of complaints going, oh, I asked for a charge point on my street and they haven't done it. It must be very, very difficult, because that resident, they don't know what they don't know, and they just know what they want, don't they? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same as all the other residents, because that might be a very, very lucky person who's got, they've got an EV because it's through their job or something like that. But everybody else on that street probably maybe can't afford to have it, or maybe they're not in that kind of privileged kind of position yet. Yeah,
it's difficult, and what I think is that a local authority needs to have a strategy in place to kind of be able to answer that question, not just in the immediate term, but in the short term as well. We've been doing some work with Oxfordshire County Council, and they're very, very good at these kind of longer term strategies. So they were looking at predominantly off-street charging hubs, but in areas where people don't have access to driveways. And then you've got a central hub that residents can use. So in those instances, a resident might ring up and say, look, I've got an EV now, I need a charge point. Oxfordshire County Council might go, right, actually, you live within 5 minutes walk of a bank of hubs or a bank of chargers we've put in place specifically for this purpose, and push them towards that. And then, again, the data can tell us that address is within 5 minutes of one of these hubs. If it's outside of that, okay, now we do need to have a conversation about potentially an on-street
Yeah.
solution for you. So,
Yeah.
but Oxfordshire had all the information. Like I say, one of those local authorities that comes to us and go, right, we've got a really good idea about what we want to do. How do we use the data to implement it?
Yes.
So there's that part of it there. But, and I saw a really interesting piece on LinkedIn this morning, and I was going to comment, but I didn't quite have time. You don't just want to rush your comment on LinkedIn, do you?
No, you don't. You've got to take your time.
Exactly. And it was saying that statistically, we don't need residential charging to the level that we think we do, because on average, drivers only drive 100 miles a week.
Yes, I might have seen that this
So
morning.
you can go and charge your vehicle, get your 250 mile in your battery, and then you can top up at a destination charge or a journey charge or whatever it might be. And statistically, that is correct. I cannot argue with that. But, and to stress, this is my opinion,
Of course.
the way that we consume has changed. We don't go out to the cinema to watch a film. We press a button
We do.
and it appears on our TV.
Yeah.
We don't go out and go to the record shop like we used to and wade through CDs, vinyls. And some people do, vinyl junkies.
Remember those days?
Yeah. Yeah, we press play on Spotify. We don't even go out to find someone to have a relationship with anymore. We go on, swipe right or left, don't we? So,
yeah, whichever ones they are.
so why should we go out and charge our car? It's new technology, and new technology is bringing everything into our houses. Yet all of a sudden, we're being told with electric vehicles, we have to treat them exactly the same as we did with ICE vehicles and take them to an EV equivalent of a petrol station.
Yeah.
So and I think most of the studies are showing now that drivers want to charge at home. Generally sort of 70-80% of drivers say I want to charge at home. And I think that's because the consumer mindset is changing. So I think, statistically, it's right. You do not need an EV charge point on your driveway. You never had a petrol pump on your driveway.
No, you didn't. No, it's very true.
But that consumer mindset has changed, and now we want to sort of press a button and have it happen within our own house.
Very true. Very true. Or do you think, how far off are we from like kind of wireless charging, do you reckon? Because I can imagine, that's because I heard about buses, kind of going on a bus route, and there'll be a bus stop where they'll kind of stop to pick up passengers, and they're actually topping up their charges they're going through. I mean, I can't imagine that on all roads, but there's got to be, if you think about it, the technology is evolving so quick. I mean, look at what the technology that you guys are using, but kind of technology is evolving so quickly, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, buses are a great sort of example of where inductive charging will work, because they're naturally very stop-start journeys.
Yeah.
Most people who commute in a car might say their journey's a stop-start, but obviously you can't just take up miles and miles of carriageway and put wireless charging in place or anything like that. So I think it will come into play, but it will just need to be very, very sort of well thought out on how and where it comes into play. It could be that it becomes an alternative for a charge point on a driveway, that actually you drive over a charging plate and you charge in that sense. Or if you think of on-street charging, where you have a charge point in a lamp column or in a bollard, actually if the parking bays along that side of the street had that technology in them, you could pull up on them and charge wirelessly or inductively that way. So I think it will come, but there are technologies or there are means of transport that are naturally better suited to it than kind of passenger vehicles at the moment.
Yeah. I saw something on Twitter yesterday. I was having a little bit of a nosy on Twitter, and I saw one of my previous interviewees, Tom Callow from My Energy. He'd put a post on, and he was showing some on-street parking charging there, and there were 4 photos, and he was talking about kind of the which one would you expect to be the best solution, and one of them was kind of where you had the wire underneath kind of a protected.
Oh,
It had a
cable
cable.
gully, yeah.
It had a cable. So there were gully. There was one with somebody else was showing it with a gully, and then there was another one with kind of like a cable cover over it. Bizarrely enough, there was one photo, and you could see what had happened. That the car was on the street. The charge point was probably 2 cars away from it, or but obviously that car that was next to it had gone. So it looked, I mean, it really looked a real mess, because basically whoever it was had just rocked up, chucked the cable in. The cable was all over the curb. So it was a mess, and it was a bit dangerous for other pedestrians. But, so a lot of what we're saying now about kind of wireless or plates or some way of kind of charging in future is probably going to be eventually in years to come, that's going to be the best way to stop any kind of accidents or incidents or anything like that, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and the thing is, there's no silver bullet with EV charging. Yeah, it needs to be a mix of technologies, whether that is cable gullies, whether it is on-street bollards, off-street hubs, destination, journey charging. We need a kind of mix of all of that.
We do.
And then it will be these new technologies coming into play, like you say, the wireless and inductive charging coming in. All of that will have a place, because we need it. I think the government wants sort of 300,000 new public chargers by 2030, and nearly 4 million in total, so residential as well. So it's got to be a mix, otherwise we won't get there.
No, I know.
Can't go and put 300,000 of a particular type of charge point, and it just won't work.
And it's also, and I've talked to a few people about this, and Sarah Sloman being one of them, and Councillor Catherine Dunn last week about this. It's also about the fact that to decarbonise, we also need to be kind of doing more active travel.
Exactly. Yeah.
So active travel, walking, taking public transport more. I know that we've had an issue with the trains lately, so in some ways that's kind of pushed people back to going back in cars, and then it's increasing the levels of air pollution and things like that, which is obviously it's not the best option, is it? But we do need to look at all these options. Is that part of? So is that something that you guys provide as well? Sort of like, so you're saying, right, okay, your solar can be this, your EV charging can be that, and actually, but you have got. So you might not be fulfilling your decarbonisation in this area, but actually if you look at active travel and do this, is that something that you come up with, or is that slightly outside it?
No, it's not been a core area for us, but we are having those conversations now, because a lot of the data we're producing, so if you think about the data we produce for, looking at where on-street charging could be implemented, we're looking at things like how wide are the pavements? Are there obstructions on the street? Like trees. Are the roads wide? So is parking an issue? And actually, all of those things come into play if you want to cycle and walk somewhere. If you know how wide a road is, a footway is, you can say, actually, there's enough room there for us to eke out a bus lane or a cycle lane. Is this a street with lots and lots of trees on that's pleasant to walk down? So all of those things, a lot of the data we're producing, creating, using, can be flipped to be used in those applications as well. But I think you're absolutely right. We can't swap an ICE vehicle one for one with an EV. That just doesn't make sense, because there's just going to be lots and lots of people sat in an EV on the same roads in the same traffic as they were before. It's just going to be a much quieter, cleaner traffic jam, which is no bad thing, but it still doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It needs to be that element of how do we make a really truly integrated transport system where potentially you don't even need a car in some instances. And that's another thing we're looking at with the data that we're producing, is actually, do you really want to go and put EV charge points along that street, or actually could you move a bus stop and put a bus stop on that street or closer to that street to help people get around the town and move around that way? So it's not just take a vehicle off the road and replace it with an EV. It's let's be sensible about this and make sure we're doing it for the right reasons, not just to get EV charging infrastructure in.
No, exactly
in place.
And it's about going, like you're saying about, I think moving bus stops and things like that is a brilliant idea. I remember so I've lived in Reading since 2004, and in fact, my husband was here. He was living here when we first started going out, so in about 2000. And I remember waiting for buses, and they weren't very reliable. so it, and it's changed over the years. It's changed so much here, So it is about making sure that the money's being put in to make sure that they've got reliable services that people can, people know, right, okay, I know that there's going to be a bus every 15 minutes, so I don't really need to take my car.
Exactly, and it's not just that. There's other solutions, isn't there? Car clubs. I
Yeah.
think will have a role to play as well. So it's trying to get all of these different elements pieced together in the right way to make it work. People want to be able to get around easily,
Yes.
and I think sometimes the mode of travel isn't as important as the journey itself. As long as you can get to where you want to go in the right time at the right cost, then I take the train a lot. Trains can be expensive, but if you pick your tickets at the right time, you can still get a decent value ticket and travel on the train.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a horses for courses thing, isn't it? It
Yeah.
needs to be the right thing in the right place. EV charging isn't the right thing in the right place for everyone everywhere at the moment. Better public transport links could do that. Better walking routes can do that.
Exactly.
So it's just getting that right mix in place.
And just remind me, so for the technology that you've got, for everything, you get drone footage, don't you? You've got satellite footage. What other kind of, how else are you kind of grabbing all the kind of the footage in the first place to convert it to data?
Yeah, so we use data, I think I would sort of say, from two different areas. There's what I would say the geospatial data, so satellite imagery, aerial photography, drone imagery, digital mapping, all of those things where there's a naturally location-based element to it. And then we bring in what I would call non-geospatial data, so it's data that's been created but has a locational element to it. So if you think of something like the National Charge Point Register, it's a database, but it tells you of the charges that are out there, but it naturally has that location. So we're bringing in things like that, energy performance certificates, 4G, 5G coverage, because obviously, how somebody interacts and pays for their EV charging is critical as well. So lots of data sets from different areas, as well as data sets we create ourselves, and try to bring them together and put them in a dashboard or an environment where the end user can kind of interact with them and make sense of them. 'Cause one of the things I'm always very sort of keen on is sort of saying, look, we're not EV experts, we're not energy experts, we're not solar experts, we're geospatial people.
Yeah.
So we know where our expertise ends. It's not our job to say exclusively this is where you should put a solar array or a charge point or a heat pump. It's our job to give the person who knows about those things the tools to make the best decision.
Yes.
So that's kind of our sort of thought process on that is, we'll work with the client to give them the toolkit so that they can make that decision. We don't want to make that decision for them, but a lot of data we bring in from the geospatial side, a lot from the non-geospatial side, and then we try to push them together and wring them out as best we can to get every single piece of information we can from it. And I think, as we said earlier, it's about turning data into intelligence.
Yeah.
So we can go from a satellite image, which kind of gives us an overview of a town, a city, a landscape, an area. But by bringing in all those other data sets, we can say, actually, in that satellite image, that is a building with a flat roof that could have 50 kilowatts of solar on it, and it will generate this much. So it's bringing all those data sets together is what enables us to do that piece.
It's amazing. It's mind blowing. It's taking people from don't know what you don't know, because I'm assuming there's a lot of, for example, local authorities and private companies that are that are kind of have got very, kind of low, a lack of knowledge when they start off working with you, but you're actually taking them. It's kind of an education piece, isn't it, as well? But it's been able to, you interpret the data and you're educating them about what they've got, that's just amazing. You're kind of what I'd class as, it's a massive value added service.
Yeah. A lot of what we're doing often is just confirming where their assets are and what they can do.
Yeah.
I think, like we said, we've done some work with Kent County Council recently. There's almost 1 million buildings in Kent, and it's impossible, or historically it has been impossible, to have an accurate asset database of all those buildings, because some are owned by the council, some are private rented, some are retail, industrial, owner occupied, whatever that might be. There is no central repository that brings all of that together, whereas actually by using satellite imagery, digital mapping data, we can create that. And the other thing I always say is it's empirical observation. It is objective. We can only say what we can see.
Yes.
We're not guessing. We don't
You're not
guess.
going under the ground. You're not going in a building. You're just seeing what you can, what information you've got.
Exactly. So it's a very objective process, and we kind of, as catchphrase would say, say what you see, and that's exactly
Catchphrase, yes.
where we are with it. Yeah.
You used to watch it too.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chips. So, okay. So if I said to you, who would you want to? Hopefully, there'll be people listening to this podcast who will be really interested. Who are you speaking to? Who do you want to speak to at the moment?
So for us, we're very, very sort of in with local authorities, helping them get their climate strategies together, their e-mobility strategies together. We've got a great client base in that sector, and some great examples of the work we're doing. So would love to speak to more local authorities who are really trying to sort of up the ante on their decarbonisation plans. As I say, we're working with a lot of developers, so people who are interested in developing their own solar projects, their own EV projects, whether that's charge point operators as well. So we're already working with them, but we think we can help. And everything we do is bespoke, so we don't just lift and shift the solution from one person to another. We make it bespoke. But also other people who think they could add value to what we're doing as well. So we work with a lot of data providers to add to what we're doing. So a lot of those data sets that are out there, maybe there's data we don't know about yet that could help in planning where you put low carbon technology that could come into play for us. And that would be great as well. So we're interested in hearing from suppliers that can help our solutions as well.
Brilliant. And if people want to contact you, then what's the best place to find you? Where's the best place? What's the email addresses and websites and such?
Well, LinkedIn, always a good starting point. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Lots of pictures of me on the train, my train selfies.
I saw that.
Yeah, always enjoy a train selfie. The website is geospatial-insight.com. There is a generic email address, which is hello@geospatial-insight.com, or you can email me direct on ian.dee, which is ian.dee @geospatial-insight.com.
Fantastic. Oh, listen, it's brilliant. So I'd love to be in your office looking at all the data that you're pulling together. I bet it's fabulous.
It is, yeah. It's as you say, it's a geek's heaven.
I love it. I'm such a geek. I'm a real geek, honestly. That's the best bit. You've got to be some kind of geek to be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, every day is a school day. I'm learning every single time I run one of these podcasts. And I hope everybody else is kind of, benefiting from this as well. But listen, thank you, Ian. You've been an absolute star. I really appreciate your time. So I'm going to say to everybody else, I shall see you next time. Thanks, Ian, and see you later, everybody. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.